Hi, you're listening to After Dinner Conversations, short stories for long discussions. What that means is we get short stories, we select those short stories, and then we discuss them specifically about the ethics and the morality of the choices the characters and the situations put us in. Why did you do this? What makes you do this? What makes us good people? What's the nature of truth, goodness, all of that sort of stuff. And hopefully we're all better, smarter people for it and learn a little bit about why we think the way we think. So thank you for listening. Hi, and welcome back once again to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions. I am your co-host, Colby, here with Ashley.
Hello.
And Jeremy.
Hi.
And Sarah.
Hi.
Hello, Sarah. Like and subscribe on our website, afterdinnerconversation.com. We're going to do like we've been doing for 50-something episodes now, every 2 weeks. Going over a short story that shows up in our monthly magazine, and then discussing it and going over the things we liked and didn't like about the ethics and things in it and all that. We hope that you'll do the same thing with your friends. You can subscribe to the magazine for $4.95 a month on our website using the discount code HAPPY. So you'd get, I think it's like 72 short stories over the course of the year for $5. So, like, it's a lot. It's like the equivalent of like the first 2 books in Dune for like word count wise, I think. It's a lot. It's a lot. I haven't read Dune, but I'm familiar. Okay. So, point being is our story today is by Jay Allisan, Blackorwhite. He was actually one of our people that submitted to our writing contest, I believe. And I don't know if he won, but he was certainly one of the top people. Maybe the runner-up, first runner-up or second runner-up or something. You guys have had me doing our description things. Do you want me to keep up with that trend, or you want to do it? I always offer.
Go ahead.
All right.
I think you should.
All right. So this is a longer story because it's more like a story. It's not like a one-trick pony. And long story short, a doctor gets called to prison, and the prison doctor is called in because someone is lactose intolerant and is stuck on the toilet having a really bad case of diarrhea, like a really bad case of diarrhea, because he ate a whole bunch of cheese and cheesecake and cheese-based things, and he's like 70 years old and his tummy doesn't do well. So the entire story takes place in the bathroom while the guy is on the toilet, just like ripping these horrendous farts the whole story, which is why this story makes me laugh. And so the doctor is just making sure that he's not dehydrated. And so the doctor is hanging out there with him and also a security guard. And they're just like talking to this guy, Fuzzy is his name, while he is just ripping the worst diarrhea of his life. And what we learn through the story is as they're like talking and he's trying to convince him to drink his salt, sugar, water solution. Yeah, for dehydration, because that's what he's worried about. Fuzzy just keeps talking because Fuzzy's not a super bright guy. You get the impression he's got about a 6th or 7th grade education. And Fuzzy just like cannot stop talking. And the doctor really could care less. But Fuzzy just keeps talking. And so what you learn as Fuzzy is talking and destroying this toilet, I can't even say that without laughing, is Ashley knows my love of all things fart humor. And so we find out that Fuzzy basically was a member of this gang, the Domino Gang, with him and his brother and 2 other guys. And they basically just like robbed from houses until eventually the brother, Fuzzy's brother, decides after the mom dies that they want to have like one big score and they're going to make enough money that they can quit robbing. And him and his brother, Fuzzy and the brother, are going to move to Houston, where under their like fantasy world, they're going to get jobs working at NASA. Not as astronauts, but just like working in NASA. So they've got a dream, even if it's a sort of, uneducated. Yeah, it's just a pipe dream, right? But they don't know any better. And so they decide to rob a Sears and Roebuck's, not for the stuff in the Sears and Roebuck's, because this is in like the 60s or 50s, but to get the guns from the Sears and Roebuck's so that they can go rob another store with guns. In the process of doing this, Fuzzy, who's never really been in a fancy store before, breaks the glass while looking at some perfume bottles. Thank you, yeah. And sets off the alarm. They run outside, and a shootout happens because the police are there. And in the process of the shootout, Fuzzy's brother gets shot and killed because he's got a gun. The police, according to Fuzzy, shot him first, and he wasn't making any aggressive actions. Fuzzy, one of the other guys gets shot, and then Fuzzy and one of the last remaining guy, the older guy that's in the gang, they get in the car. He starts shooting, blah, 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 blah. Fuzzy's trying to do the drive-away, even though he's like 14 years old or something. 14, 15 years old and has like a 6th grade education, maybe. And he hits a police officer on purpose, and then on the encouragement of his partner, backs up the van and hits him again, killing him. They then get caught and arrested. Both Fuzzy and the other guy. Any of you guys remember his name? I don't remember his name.
The other guy?
Yeah. The guy who's
Bad
also...
Jack.
What is it?
Bad Jack.
Right, Bad Jack, who was previously Black Jack, but he's not supposed to say that anymore because it's racist. But he doesn't understand why it's racist because Jack is in fact black, so Black Jack doesn't seem racist to him. But they call him Bad Jack. Absolutely. And so Bad Jack and him are on death row. They've been waiting like 50 years on death row. Bad Jack was put to death just like a week earlier or a day or two earlier or something. And there was some mistake or malfunction, so they have to reset Fuzzy's death date to get the electric chair. And that's why Fuzzy's tummy's doing so bad, is because he had his last meal and he figured he wasn't going to be around to deal with the damage that he had done to his stomach. But of course, he ate all of his last meal and then, and then he didn't get electrocuted. And so now the doctors has come to have to deal with his explosive diarrhea. Assumingly within a month or so from now, he's going to get rescheduled and will get put to death. And the end of the story is the doctors sort of transition from being frustrated that he got called out of bed in the middle of the night at like 1 a.m. to not really having a lot of respect for Fuzzy, this guy who's making him smell these horrible farts on the toilet, to, in the end, sort of shaking hands with him and sort of placating his Fuzzy sort of stunted emotional development and educational development that really stopped after he was put in jail. Matter of fact, there was even a line where he said, "I wanted to smell the perfumes because I ain't never smelled no girl before." And you're like, man, you went to jail before you even had a girlfriend. And so he spent 50-something years in jail and is going to be on death row. And then, of course, all the questions that revolve around this. All right, so that was my quick summary that wasn't that quick. It's a long story, by the way. It's one of the longest ones we've published, but it never felt boring. Maybe that's because I like fart humor. But at any rate. And you guys, things I missed, things you liked or didn't like or jumped out at you?
Not really. I think you summarized it very well.
Okay. Did it make you laugh? Am I the only nerd here who laughs at fart humor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, yes, it made you laugh, or yes, I'm the only nerd that laughs at fart humor?
You're the only one that likes this kind of absurdist humor.
I think it's hysterical.
I'm a big fan of absurdist humor, but not so much toilet humor.
All right, this one did. What about Blazing Saddles, where they're all standing around the campfire and they're all farting?
That's funny in that movie, but I was also 12.
All right, so I think maybe maybe my taste in humor never developed past 12 years old. This is totally possible. Ashley, I don't think when she was reading it, she was not laughing out loud. I had tears streaming down my face when I read it. I thought it was like the Declaration of Independence of fart comedy. I thought it was hysterical.
Partly because I'm part lactose intolerant, so I can sympathize with Fuzzy there. It is not good. It is not fun to have that happen.
Yeah. I
would agree with that.
Yeah. What did you guys think of Fuzzy as a character? Did you sympathize with him the way the author was intending, or did you not have so much sympathy?
Sympathize in his lack of education, in that side of it, that he hasn't had a life that exposed him to good things.
Okay.
And he's not a bad guy in that sense, but he's not terribly likable outside of those things. As a person, I wouldn't get along with this person.
Really?
In that sense.
Okay. What makes, like, can you expand on that a little bit? Why would you say you wouldn't get along with him?
And it really is I don't know, a lack of refined sensibilities. He's just not the crowd that I hang out in.
It's not my crowd, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sarah, same for you. It wouldn't be your kind of person you didn't find him particularly likable?
No, I found him to be a sympathetic character, in the sense that, what is the author's purpose in writing this story? Is it to make commentary on the criminal justice system? And if it is, I think he did a pretty good job explaining the way some people end up in jail. Fuzzy was too young to even understand what was happening when he landed in jail and was stuck there for literally the rest of his life. And there was no other thing that happened to him in his whole life. And so the whole, it just begs a lot of questions about the way people are treated in society and the way children get brought up and the way children get lost, because Fuzzy was a child. And the way we see him in the story, he's an old man, but he has been raised by the prison system. Yeah. And first raised by his brother, who he idolizes, and then raised by the criminal justice system after that. It's a very Les Miserables kind of story, because they started stealing because his mother couldn't provide for them the way that she wanted to. They didn't even tell her, right, that they were stealing.
Yeah, and I don't think she knew.
Yeah, they just told her that they were picking fruit on a farm, and she wanted to go with them because the money was good. And they're like, no, you're better off just staying inside. We can take care of this, So
he's sympathetic, but not necessarily likable. And
yeah, I can see the difference. Yeah, okay, I get you, Jeremy.
Okay.
I totally
the same. Sympathetic but not likable.
And it didn't occur to me to put myself in a situation where I might be hanging out with this person to even figure out if I liked him.
Yeah,
I was more just a bystander witnessing his story.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. I found it quite remarkable that for his age, and we're assuming this happened when he was somewhere between the age of 10 to 14, how much in detail he can remember those events. Granted, that may have been the only exciting thing in his life, because since that moment he's been in jail and not much excitement has happened. But I feel like he's one of those characters that will keep repeating the same story over and over and over again, like a grandpa, and you're just I don't want to talk to you. He's, like Jeremy said, not someone I would consider my friend. I don't know if I would have anything in common with them. I can sympathize that he's in this predicament, but at the end of the day, he's not a person that I'm going to want to spend time with.
Right, and how many times did he have to tell that story as he was going through the trial, all of the trials and all of the appeals, and how has the story changed? That's an interesting idea. So...
Yeah, I definitely
it was
thought...
pretty well embellished.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely thought of the sort of malleability of memory, that over 50 years or 60 years of retelling that story hundreds of times to everyone who would ever listen. I totally agree with all three of you. That story has probably become the best version of what happened that he can tell. Right? Not that he means to be that way, but that's just the way we tell history, right? You tell it from your own perspective. Yeah.
And as you tell stories over and over, they get embellished and they get refined.
Fish gets bigger.
We're all storytellers. It doesn't necessarily get bigger, but we tell the story better as we tell stories over and over.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know, Ashley, what did you think of the story? You didn't find it funny, which is totally fine. Apparently, I'm the only one who finds it funny, but
it made me sad.
Yeah,
it made me sad. Here's this guy who spent so many years in jail waiting to be executed, And the highlight is he got to eat cheesecake, which is now wrecking him. And I'm just like, I don't know. It just made me sad more than anything.
Yeah. There was a line in there that
it made me feel sad too, Ashley.
Yeah.
There was a line in there. It's weird. Like sometimes, the big lines that the author intends don't have an effect on you and the small lines do. Yeah. One of the small lines in there that really affected me was when he hands him the watermelon flavored drink. And he says, "Doc, you ever seen a watermelon? It doesn't look at all like you'd expect." And it occurs to me like, yeah, no, if you spent your whole life in prison, you barely have ever seen a watermelon. Yeah. Like maybe 2 or 3 times in your whole life when you were a kid, right? Especially if you were poor. That would be something you would think. Like, maybe everyone else hasn't seen one in every grocery store they've ever been in. That was the one part where I was like, wow, that's a rough go. Yeah.
I think the big difference, though, going back to incarceration and those sort of things, nowadays, don't they do assess like intelligence level and full understanding of what they're doing before they charge them? Like some people get put into disability institution versus death row now. So at least we've made progress from, when he was...
You can be ruled not fit for trial.
Exactly. So at least we've made progress in that regards to our criminal system compared to when he was sentenced in whatever year that was, decades and decades ago. So that, I guess, is kind of a good thing to come at us to realize, hey, it's not perfect, but we at least now make accommodations for cases such as this.
It depends on the state you're in because it's state law. So some states yes, some states no. But yeah, one of my, because I mentioned this in other podcasts, but I went to law school. I do some criminal defense work now. The description that our teacher used was in Arizona, in order to be declared criminally insane, it's not that you have to not know that it's not that you have to be like, oh, I didn't know killing someone was wrong. You have to be killing someone and think you're eating a ham sandwich. And I haven't researched it in a while, but that was the way it was explained in the class, I remember. And so it's not a question of like, yeah, you're a crazy person, so you're not fit to stand trial. No, that's not enough, at least in Arizona. It's like, I thought I was, de-seeding a watermelon when I was taking your eyeballs out. And I don't know about the mental, there's got to be some lower limit. You're absolutely right. There's got to be some lower limit where you can't.
Well, the fact that he's like, I hit him because the guy told me to hit drive. And then the way he talks about crushing the cop and just saying, yeah, I popped his head like it was a grape. And I'm just like, oh, so you don't really understand. I don't know. The way that he makes fun of it and like a child play to describe it is like, oh, you really don't understand what you're doing. That's kind of what was a red flag for me.
Yeah, he really didn't develop past a certain age emotionally.
Yeah. Right.
And you have to think about, does he have the ability to have remorse? Does he really understand what he did?
Yeah.
To begin with? And the way he tells the story is really, really embellished. Exactly what Ashley said. He popped his head like a grape. It's a pretty awful metaphor to use. And to me, it's like he's told the story so many times that he uses exactly the right words to get the exact right response that he wants from the person he's talking to.
Yeah, it's a script at this point. I totally agree with that.
So he got the response from the doctor,
Yeah. I also think, though, going back to why he's in jail, it was a police officer. Right. If it had not been a police officer, one, he definitely wouldn't, likely there's no death penalty, no death row, and probably an eligibility for parole, right? But if you kill a police officer, you're not getting out of jail. Even if you're not on death row, you're not getting out of jail most likely. Because there's
So is that...
Yeah.
Oh, is that why the doctor had the response that he did? Because he realized he was a cop killer?
No, I think it was just that because he was on death row, this is a waste of time in some ways. That was his response. Why, at least not because he was a murderer, but because oh, you were supposed to die tonight anyways.
Right. I mean, and the guy says,
So why?
Fuzzy says at some point, oh, you didn't know what I did. I thought that's why you were being mean to me. And the doctor's like, oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be mean to you. Because Fuzzy thought the reason the doctor was so mean is because he was treating a cop killer. And in actuality, the doctor was just mean because it was 1 a.m. and he didn't want to be dealing with this.
He wanted to go home to his wife and 1-year-old child.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And that's why I thought it was because it was a realization that he was a cop killer. That's why he suddenly got up and ran over to the door and was like, get me out of here. You know? I didn't think about it in terms of like, oh, he was supposed to die today.
Or just, he's a murderer and on death row, so I'm really wasting my time.
Yeah, I was a little bit confused by that moment. So
Yeah.
I was kind of looking forward to hearing what you had to say about it.
So what do you guys think would have been the right punishment for Fuzzy? Like, just in your mind, what are the factors you would have taken into account, and what do you think, if you were like the uber judge and jury who could both decide guilt and innocent and decide the punishment, what would you do?
I mean, looking at the justice system as it is, there's not a lot you can do. It's not like, well, I can assign him to a prison where he gets reformed in some sense, because that's not what prisons do.
Sure.
So it's really, how much time are you going to send him to jail for?
And do you have a number?
No, I don't.
Do you have a range? Do you have a factors
No,
you
I
would take
don't.
into account?
Yeah. The fact is that he was a kid, and, you know, I hate to say he was following orders, but in the heat of the moment...
He was clearly being exploited.
Yeah. And he was being, you know, he's the driver. You get away. He's responding to outside, you know, orders from Bad Jack, who he's used to taking orders from.
Yeah.
So,
And he's just watched his brother get gunned down.
Right.
I mean, the
So-
whole situation is
right, there's a whole bunch of factors
extraordinary.
of what he's in a fight or flight response mode at this point. And not that you can't be responsible for your actions still. There's, you know, there are extenuating circumstances here where he wouldn't have done this under normal circumstances. But yes, he's being exploited and is robbing a store and has been robbing, you know, is, you know, a practiced thief at this point. So, you know, he's responsible for his actions in that sense, but right, to say that he needs to go to prison for life is certainly, you know, until he's executed, is excessive. But I don't know, you know, if you're just sending him to jail, 10 years, I don't know. Yes, you killed somebody.
So what is the purpose of sending him to jail and killing him? I mean, and sending him to jail for a really long time before he's finally executed? It's revenge and cruelty. And it's, you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose? He killed a person. And that in itself is a tragedy. And I think that the family of the person that he killed wants to see justice happen, but in the form of this, the justice comes out as this kind of cold-blooded revenge. What is really the purpose of that? There's no healing that comes out of that. There's no change that happens out of that. So what is the purpose other than just cruelty?
Hi, this is Colby, and you are listening to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions. But you already knew that, didn't you? If you'd like to support what we do at After Dinner Conversation, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/afterdinnerconversation. That's right, for as little as $5 a month, you can support thoughtful conversations like the one you're listening to. And as an added incentive for being a Patreon supporter, you'll get early access to new short stories and ad-free podcasts, meaning you'll never have to listen to this blurb again. At higher levels of support, you'll be able to vote on which short stories become podcast discussions, and you'll even be able to submit questions for us to discuss during these podcasts. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being the kind of person that supports thoughtful discussion.
Change that happens out of that. So what is the purpose other than just cruelty?
Maybe if there wasn't an institution available to reform him and educate him, just thinking going back in time, let's say this was the 1930s or 40s or whatever, I don't know how long ago, maybe one of the things that went through the judge's mind was he is so susceptible and so malleable and so tricked that at least getting him in jail is a way so he can't become someone else's puppet again. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it may be seen as like, I'm protecting him. So he's going to get meals. Society. He's going to get medical care. He's not going to be fooled into being someone else's puppet again, because we don't know where to put him because he's such a high risk of being influenced.
So yes, if you look at it that way, we're preventing him from doing this again, and not killing cops or killing people, but being a criminal because that's the only life he knows.
I mean, I think we all assume that like he was eventually going to end up in jail.
Yes.
Like the only thing he was qualified to do was to commit crimes. The only thing he understood as a way to make money was to commit crimes. There was no positive influences in his life telling him anything different. Like it was just going to continue until,
until they got caught.
Until they got caught, right? Until they kept leveling up, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we got a doggy chewing something. That's not a good sign.
I'd say the only rebuke to that is, let's say they did let him go. He doesn't have his brother anymore. He doesn't have Bad Jack anymore. So who's to say he'd fall into another bad guy's, circle? He could have just as equally gotten into...
Yeah, it's like when they released that guy from the prison in Shawshank Redemption.
Right.
There's nothing for him on the outside. You remember that part?
Yeah.
Are you familiar at all? Okay.
Yeah. I would just say that the flip side, let's say he gets in with a really great group of people and he is no longer doing crime, because crime is, he followed his brother. And so the flip side is, what if he fell into with a great group of people, which is highly unlikely, but that always is maybe a 1% chance.
I mean, if
they would have let him go.
I mean, this is the thing that we've talked about before, right? Is like the prison system isn't meant to make people not be criminals. Like we've talked about this in other podcasts.
Yeah.
It's meant to punish because it's meant to make us, we do it under a sign of deterrent, which does it actually deter anyone? I don't know. And number two, because it's a sense of punishment, right? Like it makes us feel better to hurt people that we've deemed hurt society. But I don't think anyone in America thinks that the judicial system or the prison system in America is for making people not be prisoners, like making people better human beings. Like,
no, we don't really have a support system, or any sort of system to reform people.
Anybody who thinks that isn't actually thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's even worse today with privatization of prisons.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, Ashley, do you have a number for this guy? Are you with Jeremy 10 years?
He understands, well, at least to some degree, what he did. He understands he killed a man. And yes, he needs to pay for that, have some sort of punishment for that. But should it be his entire life? No. I agree. Something around 10 years or so. Yeah.
Does it matter to anyone that it was a police officer that he killed?
No, in the sense of it should be a stricter or
because normally killing police officers are a stricter penalty under the law.
It shouldn't be.
Okay.
It should be the same penalty regardless of who is murdered.
All right. I don't know if I'd have to think more about that one. I'm not actually sure if I have an opinion about that one yet. Because I understand the argument of, like, we want you not to shoot at police officers. And if
we want you to not shoot at anybody.
I agree. But, these are people that are in harm's way day in and day out. And I think the theory is, at least, that by making it a harder punishment by shooting at police officers, maybe they're not in harm's way as often as they would be. Like a normal person can go years and not be shot at. A police officer might not go that long, right? I don't know. I'd have to think a little bit about that one. So I'm with you guys, by the way. I think my number would be 10 years as well. Or let me throw this out as an alternative. Some sort of like mandatory, like going into like foster care or something.
Yeah.
Like something
Really,
where like a system that doesn't exist in America, right? Where
Exactly.
like you have
that
to
would
get
be the alternative.
Right, you get put in an alternative with like a family that's trained to deal with you.
Provide you some semblance of work and care.
Right. And maybe like be better role models than your parents were.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm the only one who actually would hang out and drink a beer with this guy. Like, not that I condone what he did. I don't condone what he did. But he just seemed like a harmless, dumb old man. Like, and
I don't know. Based on how tricky he is, someone could say, hey, stab the next guy that comes into your room. And you're like, I'm going to sit down and have a beer with him. He's gonna follow orders. I'm like, you are too much of a threat, sir. I don't know what somebody has told you to do before I walk in the room with you.
I don't think the guy's a threat. I think he was 12 years old and he just saw his only model figure get killed. But I understand your point. Like would I leave him with my kids? Nah, probably not. My hypothetical kids that don't exist? Probably not.
Well, who's the story really about? Like, is it about Fuzzy or is it about the doctor?
I think it's about the doctor. I think it's the doctor's story.
Yeah.
So what is the change that the doctor experiences? Like,
so from my perspective, when I read it, I thought it was the doctor's story, and it was about the doctor understanding that the person he was treating was a person.
Right.
Yeah.
So at the end of the story, he does make that change, right? Because he's laughing with him and he's agreeing to check on the tickle in the back of his throat and,
right.
You know, like treating him like a person. What makes that happen? Why does the doctor suddenly do that?
I think it happens for the doctor for the same reason it happens for me, is that, as a reader, and that is that he understood, and I think as the reader, I saw it the same way, where I was like, you know what? This isn't a bad person. This is a person that was in a bad situation and who made a bad choice. And so I really shouldn't be harsh on this person because, like, if I'd have been born with their life, I'd have been sitting in the same place they are probably.
I think.
So where is that? Sorry, Ashley, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask where that moment is.
For me?
Or for Ashley, because she just said, I think, and now I want to hear what she was going to say.
Yeah.
What I was thinking about was how wonderful of a story would this to be read by someone who is a doctor for the prison system. There's dentists for the prison system, dental hygienists for the prison systems, and it would be insightful to see if this is something that they struggle with. If, you know, how much first of all, how much access do they get to a person's file? Obviously, the doctor went in not knowing that, just knowing medical records. Right. But after you've seen these people after a while and get to know them, granted, you take an ethical oath to do no harm, but if it becomes more challenging for them to treat people who they totally despise them, like cannot even, I think at that point they just need to get out of that particular field. But how much of a struggle is it for them to treat people that
they don't like?
Say they have a Nazi symbol on them and you're Jewish and you have to treat this as your patient. Right. Granted, you have to do that all the time in and out of prison systems with people regularly, but obviously you'd see a lot more of a different clientele if you were working under those circumstances.
Yeah.
So the author really wanted to make this Fuzzy character, as despicable as possible throughout the entire story, so that we could really, really see how the doctor was struggling to treat him. And I think I'm understanding what you guys are saying about that. I was just really confused by that one moment. I feel like the rest of it I kind of got. But the moment where he gets up and runs and now he's like sitting in the hallway with the guard, Ralph.
Yeah.
But the reason he gets
the
up...
moment right before that, like, why does he run away all of a sudden?
Well,
like, he's been with this guy who's just despicable. What is the breaking point for the doctor?
Thing that happens right before that, the thing he learns is that Fuzzy's on death row.
Right.
How did he not know he was on death row the whole time?
I think he's just he isn't part of the prison system. All he got was medical records for this is what he's dealing with.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah. No, but I agree with you though, sir. I don't know why that was the thing that like caused that reaction.
Yeah.
Maybe he just never met anyone on death row before. Maybe it didn't occur to him that death row even really still existed.
And I guess I was kind of thinking that maybe it was the realization that he was supposed to die that day. Like, this is...
Yeah.
Right.
You are literally fixing somebody just so the prison system can kill them.
Right.
Make them nice and healthy so that they can be killed.
Yeah.
That's pretty awful. The Princess Bride and the
oh yeah, right.
He wants everybody to be nice and healthy before he tortures it. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Why are you bothering to fix me if they're just going to kill me? Well, that's kind of, for me, I thought that's maybe what it was. Yeah, ain't you know this is death row? Well, sure. I mean, I suppose, but that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. And so
I don't know. It
sounds
sounds
Ralph says something to the doc that kind of changes his mind.
Yeah, and that I didn't really get what he said either.
I think Ashley found it.
No, I'm just the conversation that he has with the security guard Ralph. He says, "You're a young fella, Doc, still new to the game. I expect you can't save them all." I mutter, and so that's you can't look at it as either or because it's not. It's both, and it always will be. You get it? So it's you can't save them all.
Like you're just making him healthy to kill him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, the doctor is really tired at that point too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. at that point.
Yeah, that's towards the very end when he asks Ralph that, because Ralph is the security guard who has to deal with this guy and knows exactly today was the day.
Yeah, and Ralph is really sympathetic to him. Ralph kind of humors him with his stupid jokes and all this sort of things, right? I don't know. I mean,
the Stockholm syndrome thing at the end there, where they're all laughing at this really terrible joke.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That is racist and awful, and Ralph starts laughing, and then the doctor's laughing so hard his eyes are tearing up.
It's funny. I actually had heard that joke before.
Yeah, me too.
You had too. I think it's from an Eddie Murphy thing, or it's like a stand-up comedian or something from like the 80s, which is fine. Whatever. Borrow the joke. And when he started telling it midway through the story, I'm like, is he really going to tell the joke in the story? I'm like, and they got to the end, I'm like, oh yeah, they are. So I don't know. Maybe the only difference for me between you guys is I genuinely, maybe it's because I find the fart humor funny. Maybe that was the thing, but I genuinely thought Fuzzy was a likable guy. I think, he's just like a child. He's just.
I wonder if the author heard you say that you thought Fuzzy was a likable guy. He'd be like, darn it.
Yeah, it could be.
This guy missed my point.
Yeah, but I think that's also the point of good writing, right? Like it's a two-way conversation. It's what the writer's trying to say, and it's what you're interested in hearing. And so each reader gets something different out of the writing, which I think is fine, right? Or the movie or the whatever. But
I think it's an interesting choice on behalf of the writer, because here's a gentleman literally pants down on the ground and he's sitting on the toilet and humiliating, right? Here comes a doctor literally going, and you're making the worst sounds ever. That's a humiliating time to be that vulnerable and that exposed to another person, when you're in that sort of situation. And so, I think for Fuzzy,
no dignity left.
I think for Fuzzy, he's like, "Oh, you think this is bad? I'm about to die today."
Right.
And so, just when you think he couldn't be humiliated anymore, you realize, oh, there's a reason why that doesn't bother him. There's a reason why he can just shrug this off.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me look, see if we missed any questions. I don't think we did, but let me just make sure. I don't think we did.
Yeah, I guess I'm just really interested in and of course, the more we talk about it, the more I'm starting to understand.
Yeah.
The doctor's change what exactly the doctor learned from this situation. Like, what is the doctor leaving there with?
I think
What sort of new
some sort of
understanding?
empathy, maybe.
Some sort of new level. And what did Ralph teach him in that moment?
So for when you're new to practice in medicine, you want to save everybody. You want to change the world, and then at some point you realize you can't. And that can be a really hard pill to swallow, because you went to medicine to help people, and you reach a point where no matter what you do, it doesn't matter, but you still have to continue going, and that's a really hard mental block to kind of get over, because then you start to question, well, why am I even doing it for this person? Like, why am I even fixing this person's cavity when they have a soda ready to drink in a moment? And you're just like, yeah, why am I doing this? And so I think that's...
So you think it's that split between the why am I doing this and this is a person? That, like, his balance between those two things in his head?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a hard thing to... First of all, he comes and he's frustrated, and then he's like, hey, here's the person, I gotta treat him, and then add on the third layer that he's on death row, and you're just like, wow, that's heavy to swallow.
And Ralph is like such an interesting character in that moment too, because he's like a bystander who watches this man for nearly 2 decades, and he is just watching this whole thing go down, and like at this last moment he's got this wisdom to give to he's like this silent teacher, just waiting for the doctor to be at that perfect moment to get to receive this. Ralph's an interesting character.
Right, so let me finish with one last question, then we'll call it quits on this one. Do any of you think that the doctor will go and either visit Fuzzy again before he gets killed? Like, just as a person, like he'll go visit him to say hello before he gets executed? Or do you think he'll walk out and be like, yep, that sucked. Like, he was a nice guy. I'm sorry he got killed, but I'm not going back there.
I think he will not visit him, but that he did leave here with some growth.
Okay. Sarah?
So he'll be a better doctor, but a better bedside manner, but he's not going to go back and visit him.
Yeah, I think that this whole interaction had a profound effect on the doctor and changed him. But it'd be nice to think that he would go back.
Yeah.
He might get called back again.
That's true. Ashley?
I think he will.
I think he will.
And he will blame it on, I need to check up on him and see how he's doing.
Yes.
Because
I agree.
He went on this roller coaster of whatever, and I don't know if he got the full closure of it, or he just wants to see him one more time because you want to see your patient through. And he's like, I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to blame it on, I need to make sure he recovered, 48 hours after whatever. I think he will go visit and blame it on a medical purpose, but I think he'll really want to go and just see him one more time.
I'm with Ashley on this one. I totally agree. But I couldn't tell you what sentence in there would lead me. Like, it's just sort of a general feeling. I can't point to something.
Maybe it's Doc Yardley. Like, you have to think, I mean, we haven't even touched on this, but where Doc Yardley is. So Bad Jack was supposed to go right before Fuzzy.
Yeah.
Something happened, and Doc Yardley was unavailable because he's treating Bad Jack, who is the victim of a botched execution.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, that is real rough.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like Doc Yardley has this relationship with these people. Now Doc Evergreen is new to this, but he is going to be the new Doc Yardley at some point.
That could be.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you for listening. After Dinner Conversation, our website's afterdinnerconversation.com. $4.95 for the magazine. You can get stuff on our website. You can get it through Amazon. You can get it through your library on the Libby app or on Overdrive, as well as Apple, Kobo. There's like a million options. BarnesandNoble.com. Like, everywhere you can get ebooks, you can get our magazine now. Like and subscribe. I think that's it. Thanks for joining us, Ashley.
Bye.
People across the internet.
Bye.
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 If you've enjoyed listening to this, please like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton. You know, the vast majority of people listen haven't liked and subscribed, which means maybe it shows up in your algorithm, maybe it doesn't. So don't leave that to chance. Just go ahead and hit that button, and we'd sure appreciate that. And that way we can keep doing what we're doing, and you're not left to the whims of some algorithm. Thanks.